All right, so let's jump right in. For decades, gosh, for our whole lives, the world has poured billions, maybe trillions, of dollars into fighting global poverty. But here's the kicker. How do we actually know if any of it is really working? And look, this isn't just some academic question you'd hear in a classroom. It is, without a doubt, one of the biggest, most urgent challenges in all of economics. I mean, think about it. If we get this wrong, we're not just wasting huge amounts of money. We are failing the very people we're trying to help. And for the longest time, we kind of thought we had the answers. Turns out, a lot of it was just a shot in the dark. So you basically had this huge split in the world of development economics. It was like two different camps. In one corner, you had the big thinkers, the folks looking at everything from 30,000 feet, creating these huge, sweeping theories about how entire countries could grow. And then in the other corner, you had this new group, let's call them the ground truthers. And they started asking a much simpler but much tougher question. Okay, that's a nice theory, but show me the proof. Show me what actually works. To really get why what happened next was such a revolution, we kind of have to go back and see how things were done before and why it all started to fall apart. It really boils down to this classic problem that trips everyone up, the difference between correlation and causation. Just because two things happen at the same time doesn't mean one made the other happen. Think of it this way. For years, the main tool economists had was looking at these big country-level numbers. They'd look at a bunch of countries and notice, hey, the countries with more textbooks in their schools also seem to be richer. And so the conclusion seemed obvious, right? Aha, we found the secret sauce. Let's ship a ton of textbooks everywhere, and that'll boost their economy. But is life ever really that simple? Well, slowly but surely, people started realizing, this isn't cutting it. It's just not reliable. This quote here says it all. The whole field was waking up to the fact that correlation is not causation. Just because rich countries have more textbooks doesn't mean textbooks make countries rich. Maybe rich countries just have more money to spend on things like textbooks. See the problem? They needed a way to get real proof, not just a hunch. And that need for real proof, it led to something huge. In the 1990s, the entire field of economics went through what's now called the credibility revolution. It was this massive, ground-shaking shift. The new mission? Stop guessing and start proving cause and effect. And the superstar of this revolution, the big new tool, was something called the Randomized Controlled Trial, or RCT for short. Now, this wasn't some crazy new invention. It was actually borrowed straight from medicine. You know how they test a new drug, right? They get a big group of people, randomly give the real pill to half of them and a placebo to the other half. Because the only real difference between the two groups is the pill, any change in their health has to be because of it. It's a brilliant, simple way to find the true cause. And it boils down to 3 really simple steps. Step 1, you take your population and randomly split them. One group gets the thing you're testing, we call them the treatment group. The other group doesn't, that's your control group. Step 2, you actually do the thing. You give out the textbooks or the new medicine or whatever. And finally, step 3, you step back and compare the outcomes. Whatever difference you find between those two groups, well, that's it. That's your proof. That's the real impact. And I really can't overstate this. This wasn't just a minor update. It was a total game changer for how economics was done. They went from telling stories that sounded right, based on those big correlations, to actually finding hard, cold evidence of what truly makes a difference in people's lives. Now, this idea of an RCT sounds great in a textbook, but it's another thing entirely to take it out into the real, messy world. It needed a pioneer, someone brave enough to try it, and that person was an economist named Michael Kremer. His laboratory, it wasn't some sterile room with beakers. It was the schools of rural Kenya. And the story of how it started is just fantastic. It wasn't part of some grand 5-year research plan. As Kremer himself tells it, it was basically an accident. He was in Kenya visiting friends, one of whom worked for a local nonprofit. They were just wondering, hey, is this stuff we're doing actually helping? And Kremer just casually suggested, well, you could try this thing. It's like a medical trial. And with that one suggestion, he lit the fuse on a complete revolution. So where did they start? With a question that feels, well, almost silly to ask. Does giving students more textbooks improve their test scores? I mean, of course it does, right? It's just common sense. But does it really? And if so, by how much? It was time to stop assuming and actually find out. And this was the perfect test case. Everyone, from governments to nonprofits, was totally sold on textbooks because of that old correlational data. And you can't blame them. I mean, in the part of Kenya where they were working, the situation was pretty desperate. Think about it. Only one textbook for every 17 kids. So yeah, giving them more books felt like an absolute no-brainer, a slam dunk. But then they ran the experiment, and the result was a complete shock. For the average student, giving them more textbooks had zero impact. None, nada, zilch. Everything everyone thought they knew, all that common sense, it was just wrong. And this is where these experiments are so incredibly powerful. The result wasn't just, oh, textbooks are useless. It was much more interesting. When they dug into the data, they saw the textbooks did help, but only for the top-performing students. For everyone else, they were too advanced. So this didn't just kill a bad idea, it gave birth to a much better one. Maybe we need to target support to where students actually are in their learning journey. That's how you go from spending money to spending money smartly. You can just imagine, right? This one surprising result from a handful of schools in Kenya, it sent absolute shockwaves through the entire development world. It was proof that one small, careful experiment could teach you more than years of looking at big, blurry national data. And this was only the beginning. And it's exactly for this reason that in 2019, the story comes full circle. Michael Kremer, along with his collaborators Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo, won the Nobel Prize in Economics. And the prize wasn't for some obscure theory. The citation was crystal clear. It was, quote, for their experimental approach to alleviating global poverty. They were awarded for changing the entire game. And the textbook study wasn't a one-off. Kremer's team ran another experiment on something even simpler, giving kids cheap medicine to get rid of parasitic worms. And the results from this one, whoa, they were off the charts. It cost almost nothing, but school absenteeism just plummeted. The proof was so powerful, so undeniable, that a whole new organization, Deworm the World, was founded just to scale this up. And just let this number sink in for a second. 150 million. That's not the total number of kids ever treated. That is the number of children who get deworming medicine every single year because of this one line of research. We're not talking about a model on a spreadsheet anymore. This is a massive real-world impact that you can see and measure. So what's the big takeaway here? Thanks to the work of pioneers like Kremer, these experiments aren't just some weird thing a few academics do anymore. They are now the gold standard. We're talking the World Bank, national governments, major charities. They all use this test, learn, and scale approach. It really was a complete shift from a world of guessing to a world of knowing. And that kind of leaves us with this one big, exciting question, doesn't it? This whole revolution happened because they took a massive problem like global poverty and broke it down into small, answerable questions. So it makes you wonder, what other huge challenges, things like climate change, public health, education reform, what other big problems are just sitting there, waiting for someone to run the right small experiment that finally shows us what really, truly works?